Thank you very much. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Horsham Planning Committee. I am Councillor Ellis Brown. I will be chairing this meeting this evening, and I shall be supported by the Vice Chair, Councillor Lynn Lambert, and the professional officers. Thank you for attending, and may I remind members of the public that it is not a forum for the public to ask questions or challenge the points raised during committee meeting, debate by the officers or debate by the members. You must not engage with the members or call out during the debate. Thank you. We have a fairly full agenda, so if you have requested to speak when invited to do so, it's important that you keep to your allotted time. And for some of you, that will be extended, and I'll explain that shortly. This will be monitored and you will be asked to finish promptly. Your comments and discussion points must be relevant to the application the committee is considering. We're not expecting a fire drill this evening, so should you hear the alarm, please make your way to the nearest exit, located at the rear of the chamber, and then the assembly point is outside the Lynn Cross Public House. May I also ask council members and members of the public to please switch your mobile phones to silent or other electronic devices off. When speaking, please make sure that you turn your microphone on and turn the microphone off when you have finished. When members are voting, make sure your arm is clearly raised so that the officer can accurately capture the vote. I also remind members on the committee you cannot vote on applications within your own ward. I'd also remind everybody here this evening, please show respect to each other throughout the meeting, most especially as this is being live streamed. Please refrain from any personal comments relating to the officers or members of the committee. Before we proceed, could the officers here this evening please introduce themselves, starting with the officers on my right.
It's Matthew Porter, Planning Officer.
Emma Parks, the Head of Development.
Claire Brown, Principal Planning Solicitor.
Monica Balazs, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you very much. Apologies for absence and notification of substitute members. Do we have any apologies, and are there any substitutes here this evening?
We have received apologies from Councillor Dennis Livingston, and his substitute is Councillor Warwick Hallowell. And we have received apologies from Councillor Peter Wonderborg. His substitute is Councillor Joanne Knowles.
Okay, thank you. Item number 2, minutes from the meeting held on the 21st of October. Do you all agree I can sign these as a true and accurate reflection of the meeting? All those agree?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Declarations of members' interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members of the committee? Councillor Knoll. I'll come to you in a moment. Councillor Croker.
Thank you, Chairman. On DC 241855 and 1856, I was present at the Rudwick Parish Council meeting last week, where both these items were discussed. However, I have no interest in either of the items, and I'm not influenced by the discussion I heard. And with Chairman's permission, I intend to vote on both these items after hearing other members' opinions this evening. Also, on DC 250849 Delta, I am the ward councillor, together with my colleague at the other end of this table. I will speak on it, but I will not be voting.
Okay, on the first point, you will be allowed to vote. On the second one, you won't be allowed to vote, as you've said, because you are the ward member.
Yes, that's what I understood. I can vote on the
Just confirming
Rudwick one, but I
yeah.
cannot vote on the
Yes, I'm just confirming that.
Woodmancote. What is it? Small Dole one.
I'm just confirming that's fine for you to do that.
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Croker.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarity, item 7 is within the Bramber Upper Beeding Woodmancote ward, which I represent, although it is in Henfield Parish. As ward member, I will probably be commenting on it, but I won't be voting. Thank you.
That's okay, Councillor Croker. Councillor Vickers.
Just for clarity, Chairman, I won't be voting on DC 1509, 251509,
as I'm the local member for that ward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? No, okay. Announcements from the chair. Agenda items 5 and 6, that's DC 24/1855 and DC 24/1856. The officer will present both applications together. Members of the public who have registered to speak will be allowed to speak on both applications together, and you will be allowed additional time. Members will debate both items together, but votes will be taken separately. Okay, so we'll be discussing them together, but you will vote separately on each of the two applications. Thank you. So moving on then, item number 5 is DC 24/1855, the Mucky Duck, Tisman's Common, Rudgwick, and item number 6, which is DC 24/1856, the Old House, Tisman's Common, Rudgwick. Please could the officer please present both applications to committee. Thank you.
Good evening, members. Since the committee report publication, the council has updated its habitat regs appropriate assessment for water neutrality for these two projects. That's to accord with the agreed procedure with Natural England to raise no objection following withdrawal of their position statement. So on the slide shown is the site, which is in countryside south of Bucks Green and Rudgwick, with a listed building, the Grade 2 Old House, also on the site. On the slide shown here, you can see that the site is currently split, with the Mucky Duck, it's a public house and B&B, and its associated outbuildings known as the Ducklings and Building 3. They're severed from the old house to the north, which is a separate dwelling house. The photographs shown show the Mucky Duck building. This is subject to being alterations over time, some of which detract from the qualities of what is a non-designated heritage asset. So on the slide now is the proposed site plan, and the proposals comprise the conversion and extension of the Mucky Duck and its outbuildings to a boutique hotel, restaurant and bar, with the conversion of the old house to additional hotel accommodation. As set out in the committee report, it's judged an appropriate rural diversification scheme of an existing site use that supports the rural economy and is in compliance with the development plan. It's also in compliance with the development plan given the overall level of site activity that would arise from the scheme and the impacts of those which environmental health confirm would be within neighbour tolerance due to a suite of operational site management planning conditions that are recommended. And that includes use of the proposed driveway onto the most impacted neighbour to the immediate north, Westlands, and the boundary treatment there is shown on the slide. On highway impacts, the proposal involves rationalisation of site access into a single entry and exit taken off Horns Hill Lane, which the Highway Authority is satisfied would operate safely. So you can see from the slide here that the design intent to repurposing the site buildings is contemporary and bold, and it's deliberate to attract patrons and guests to the new business, which would help support community use of the Mucky Duck. So less than substantial harm has been identified to the significance of the old house listed building, with the council's conservation officer identifying and setting benefit to reuniting the old house with the Mucky Duck, the former also been subject to internal works and extension that require listed building consent. So in overall conclusion, having taken the necessary heritage and planning balance exercises, both the full plans and the listed building consent applications are recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in the respective committee reports.
Thank you very much. Invite the first speaker this evening, and that's Kathleen Smith. and you have the opportunity to speak on both of these applications. And in view of that, you will be allowed 6 minutes. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Kath Smith. I live at Westland, next door to the old house. Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to address the Planning Committee. I speak in objection to the application in its current form. For anyone here old enough to remember, there's a famous Joni Mitchell song with the line, "The day Paradise put up a parking lot." That is exactly what is being proposed in the garden next to mine at the old house. The old house, currently advertised for sale on Rightmove, is described as nestled in a tranquil location. Boasting a barn-style double garage, the mature gardens offer a serene retreat. The property's outdoor areas strike a perfect balance between tranquility and practicality. Yes, it's a Grade 2 listed residential dwelling and should not become a commercial property in order to enhance the sight of the Mucky Duck and provide its vehicle access and parking. In July 2024, when I moved into Westland from the peace of the Yorkshire Dales, it ticked many boxes. The only slight question mark was the future of the Mucky Duck, 2 doors down and closed since December 2023. The agent was confident it would be reopened as a pub. And besides, the Grade 2 listed old house and its garage provided a reliable buffer to maintain the peaceful enjoyment of my home. Imagine my surprise then, only weeks after moving in, discovering that the old house had been discreetly sold to the Mucky Duck developer. Then in December, the further shock at a planning presentation which showed the change of use of the old house to commercial accommodation. A new access road and car park for 36 spaces running the entire length of my garden. A no double height garage retained, which currently would provide an effective barrier to light and noise pollution from the existing Mucky Duck footprint. The planning officer's report promotes the argument that permission would ensure the financial viability of the business. But this cannot be known. The business will succeed or fail depending on the number of factors in what is a challenging economic environment for hospitality. If it fails, the village would be left with a larger commercial footprint. What further alternative use will then be sought? Something even worse. The proposed change of use is detrimental to the immediate residential properties, and I therefore reiterate my objection to the plans on the basis of the many hours of noise and light pollution I would suffer, including late at night and with significant risk of drainage issues impacting my property. I request baseline noise and light pollution assessments to be recorded for later comparison. Referring to the overall plan, the Conservation Officer said the design was courageous. I wondered if that was a polite word for carbuncle. Many people raised objections to the application because of the impact on the local area. The local community are collectively against the plan in its current guise. We are the affected ones. Those in favour are not living on the doorstep. In size and scale, the whole development is out of keeping with the locality. No developmental proposal is ever black and white, and I understand that an officer's recommendations will always turn on the relative weight they attach to the merits and demerits. It is my belief that too little weight has been attached to the adverse impact on the immediate locality. The perceived but unqualified and unquantifiable potential benefits of this scheme accrue to the wider community, whereas all the quantifiable harm is real, tangible and inevitable, and will fall on the immediate locality and its residents. It is clear that the impact on me and my neighbours can only be ameliorated by many stringent conditions, and I acknowledge that the planning officer has recommended some. But the Environmental Health Officer is clearly concerned about the impact on the neighbourhood and Westland in particular. Can we have watertight assurances that those conditions recommended will be complied with, that no objection to lift the conditions will ever be permitted, And similarly, should they be breached, that your enforcement officer will intervene immediately to ensure that they are rigorously complied with. With so many conditions, you run the risk of non-compliance, so perhaps it should not be permitted in the first place. The proposal creates multiple hazards to road safety, and the lack of objection from highways is perplexing. I'm astonished that there was no clear objection to the proposed new vehicle access, where the applicant only has sightlines on one side within their control. The existing entrance from Hornsill Lane remains the better option, 2 controlled sightlines and further from neighbours. The proposal is antisocial. My drive will become a turning point and neighbouring verges will become a car park extension. There is nowhere on Hornsill Lane where 2 cars can pass if one is parked, let alone an emergency vehicle. Noise and disturbance from on-site activities, especially functions and events, plus associated vehicle movements, particularly on social hours, will make my life hell. Venue capacity has never been explicitly stated, especially in relation to outdoor space. Therefore, how can any noise, light or traffic assessments be relied upon? From drawings alone, the estimated outdoor seating could be in the order of 120 or more, giving a potential total capacity of something like 200 to 240 people. Tell me how 36 car parking spaces accommodates that number of guests. Where does car number 37 and upward park,
Could
if
you
not
bring
on a
your
verge?
comments to conclusion, please?
I will.
Thank you.
And how can that number of people in a venue have no noise implications for me and my neighbours? A new wall has been proposed running the length of the new access to provide some acoustic and light protection. The hedge in which it is set to replace currently provides...
Excuse me, thank you. You've had your allotted time.
I did ask for a slightly longer time because I do have long COVID and I am struggling to breathe.
Okay, in that case, I will allow you to go on, but not indefinitely, obviously. I'll give you another 30 seconds.
Thank you. The hedge which it is set to replace currently provides amenity to my property as well as supporting significant biodiversity. Removal of this hedge is not included in the flawed biodiversity net gain calculations. If approved, I request that in the strongest terms that a condition should be added to ensure the proposed wall is built within the existing hedge line and maintain my amenity whilst retaining key biodiversity. Finally, but rather importantly, no one has even discussed how the shared septic tank between Westland and the Old House will be addressed and operated in the future. What is clear is that the owners of the neighbouring residential properties will have been let down by the planning process should these proposals go ahead as it stands. I and the local community want to see the Mucky Duck become a hospitality venue again, but the design and scale of what is proposed is not in keeping with the rural area. Thank you for your very kind attention.
Thank you very much. Invite Amanda Sutton, please. You two have 6 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Amanda Sutton from Neame Sutton, and I'm here today acting as agent on behalf of the applicant. My client, as you know, has aspirations to open a boutique hotel, restaurant and bar in an area that he grew up in, and he passionately believes that if done well, it would succeed and contribute to the local economy, hospitality and the tourism sectors. As we all know, the hospitality sector has been severely affected by the COVID pandemic, and that trading since has continued to be adversely affected by factors such as high energy, labour and wholesale food and drink costs. According to government statistics, in the first half of this year, a total of 209 pubs closed in England and Wales, which equates to about 8 a week. That's up from 6 a week last year. That said, people are still going to pubs, especially when the sun's out during our warm spring and summer. The importance, therefore, of al fresco dining is key to a venue's success, something that the existing Mucky Duck pub lacks. The proposed landscape setting is not just a matter of aesthetics, but business imperative. We also know that the Mucky Duck cannot simply rely on its local custom and passing trade. It needs to become a destination venue known for its high quality rooms, outstanding landscape setting and a vibrant culinary offering. My client is committed to providing the significant investment now necessary to create such a destination venue. Members may therefore be wondering why there is a for sale sign outside the Mucky Duck and the old house, as you've heard. This doesn't take away from my client's commitment to the project, but it is simply reflective of the fact that the application was submitted over a year ago with no guarantee of a successful outcome. It serves only to offer my client contingency planning in the event that permission is not forthcoming. My client does, however, hope that you share his vision for the site and endorse your officer's recommendations today. We have worked closely with your officers over the last 18 months during both pre-application discussions and during the application itself to ensure that the proposal before you today is comprehensive, robust and ready for your consideration, and we are thankful to them for their time and their assistance. We've also engaged with the local community by way of a public exhibition and presentation to the Parish Council and have sought to respond to concerns where possible. We have enclosed the alfresco dining and car parking areas within walls to seek to minimise disruption. Unlike the existing uncontrolled residential use of the old house, by incorporating it into the commercial operation of the Mucky Duck means that it will become actively managed to ensure that it remains neighbourly. An operational site management plan is required to be submitted as part of the discharging of conditions in the event that permission is granted. And this will provide further details regarding the day-to-day responsibility for ensuring that the standards expected are maintained and who will act as a first point of contact for local residents. Currently, the Mucky Duck stands in a poor and deteriorating physical condition, having suffered from a lack of investment for a sustained period of time. This is perhaps not surprising, given that the emphasis of recent years has been one of survival. The Mucky Duck now requires significant investment and redevelopment to secure its reopening and survival in the long term. My client's proposal for a high-quality boutique hotel, restaurant and bar meets an unmet need for additional overnight accommodation, for which there is high demand within the district, as evidenced in the Council's tourism and visitor strategy. It also helps the Council meet one of its 5 economic priorities for tourism for the period up to 2027, again evidenced in the Council's economic strategy. My client is firmly committed to delivering a high-quality boutique hotel, restaurant and bar founded on quiet enjoyment and relaxation. I therefore respectfully request that you endorse your officer's recommendation and grant planning permission here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I invite Councillor Steve Alker, Rudgwick Parish Council. And you have 10 minutes should you need it. Thank you. You move that speaker.
It's not on, the light's not on.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Firstly, the original DC 24 1855, the Mucky Duck. Rudgwick Parish Council welcomed an application for this site to be retained for hospitality purposes, but had objections to some aspects of the proposal as well as some material concerns. Those concerns around lighting, noise, drainage and waste treatment have now been addressed or covered by the regulatory conditions recommended by the planning officer. It is expected that the RPC query regarding actual fire escape requirements will be dealt with by the scrutiny of the HDC building regulation team. Turning now to the 2 areas of RPC objection to the proposal. Firstly, the Parish Council maintains that the rural street scene and character of the area will be detrimentally affected by the unsympathetic design and materials chosen for the copper-clad kitchen block on the main building. The applicant's architects designed a mixed-use development directly next to the new Emirates Stadium in Islington using similar copper-clad extensions signalling the building's entrances. They state that these act as a striking tree-like avenue along one side of the Drayton Park Road. Surely an urban development of 277 units adjacent to Arsenal Football Club, mimicking a tree-lined avenue, should not be the inspiration of a development in such a rural setting. This copper carbuncle, situated on the western elevation of the building and prominently facing onto Horns Hill Lane, will also have to incorporate ventilation outlets, air conditioning units, and other paraphernalia required for a hotel kitchen. It will undoubtedly be a most unsightly blot on the natural rural landscape and street scenery of this country lane, with its neighbouring listed building. RPC maintains that this is a major design flaw and conflicts with Rudgwick Neighbourhood Plan policies 6 and 7 and elements of HDPF policies 25, 30, 32 and 33. RPC's second area of objection is regarding parking and traffic. The Officers Committee report, paragraph 636, mentions that the local highways authority says the proposal is not considered to result in a material change in the character of traffic in the vicinity of the site. But what about the resultant increase in volume of traffic? The venue's countryside location, in proximity to the beauty spots and attractions of the area, will undoubtedly add to the traffic volume and make visitors dependent upon private vehicles. RPC notes that the LHA bizarrely chose not to take up the applicant's offer to improve the junction of Horns Hill Lane and Loxwood Road, declaring any mitigation unnecessary. This junction has very poor visibility, so the decision not to accept the applicant's offer is incomprehensible, given that every vehicle will need to negotiate it. Also, RPC considers overspill parking on rural Horns Hill Lane to be unacceptable and is yet to be convinced that the number of car parking spaces is adequate. The case officer appears, disappointingly, to have taken the LHA view on these issues at face value. It is the local community who will have to live with the consequences of any unresolved concerns resulting from this development. Therefore, the Planning Committee is asked to take these issues fully into account before making a final decision on this application. One last incidental point, RPC notes that regulatory condition 22 of the committee report appears to be missing some words, and therefore its meaning remains unclear. Moving on to the DC 24/1856, the Old House. This proposal was originally validated as the Mucky Duck listed building consent application, and as such, Rudgwick Parish Council initially chose to respond to both the full planning application and the listed building consent with one statement covering the whole site in all aspects. The details have only very recently been amended on the HDC planning file to remove the Mucky Duck from the application title. As a result, the points of objection in the RPC statement to the full application given earlier, the Mucky Duck DC 24/1855, also relate to the application for the Old House. However, this statement will not cover the same grounds again, but simply aim to highlight some specific areas of objection. Any approval of converting the old house into commercial accommodation linked to the proposal for the Mucky Duck Hotel would further add to the problems caused by an expected increase in traffic volume at the junction. It would also exacerbate the pressure on parking spaces at the site. Overspill parking on Hornshill Lane is not acceptable, and the listed old house's setting on the lane itself would be compromised. Additionally, although RPC still questions the choice of copper cladding for the extension to the old house, it does accept that it is to the rear of the building, unlike the front extension to the Mucky Duck, which severely degrades the street scene. It is debatable as to whether this choice reflects either common building styles or characteristics of the local vernacular. It could therefore be perceived to be conflicting with RPN policies 6, 7.1 and aspects of HDPF policies 32 and 33. Should the Planning Committee decide to permit the application, this evening, conditions added to the approval could require the prevention of parking overspill onto Hornshill Lane in general and in front of the listed building in particular. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. If you could turn the microphone off, please, when you leave. No. Thank you. Invite the officers to come back on the few points that were raised during that those by the speakers. Thank you.
Yep, there's quite a few points. So just to cover them off in no particular order, but hopefully themed around issues. The point raised by the parish about condition 22, that is noted. I think it's a poor structure of wording. So the intention behind it is that it basically the development be implemented in full in specification of the travel plan statement. Apologies on the ordering of condition 22. In terms of highways and parking, obviously we got a situation where the local highway authority is satisfied in all the usual areas of highway assessment, that's access, safety, parking provision in accordance with their standards, the use of the junction. I think their use of the word character is probably, well, it should be taken in the context of their role in terms of highway specifications. So it should be interpreted to mean traffic volume. So the character of the use of the roads and what is being accommodated on the highway, rather than a sort of more generalised term of character, which is taken in other context. So basically is that they are happy with the amount of additional traffic that would use this junction and don't feel that it's necessary to secure that improvements which were put forward as pre-application discussions with the highway authority. They have visited the site. The highway officer visited as part of the application, and they looked at the width of the access that's proposed, particularly around deliveries and waste, and were satisfied that if there is enough capacity on the site to avoid the overspill parking. What we can't do is to condition that there is no overspill parking on the road, because that's, well, firstly in highway land and outside the red line, and it would be through a traffic regulation order legislation as opposed to planning if that became an issue. In terms of the design, obviously, yes, it's unusual, but you do see this material in rural context. I think the point is not so much, well, it's in the countryside, it's wrong to use it. It's more, does it integrate and work with the building? And I did pick up on the parish's acceptance of that use of contemporary treatment to the listed building, because it was at the rear and replaces an existing conservatory of sort of nondescript architectural value. They did accept that it is a way in which you can extend a building by keeping the original plan form and the integrity of the listed building intact, whilst adapting the building for future purpose, which is really the driver for what heritage consultants look at in terms of how to repurpose and keep the optimum value of listed buildings. In terms of street scene, there are some photographs on some of the other slides. The one at the bottom, sorry, it's quite far away, but basically what you see at the junction is one of the frontages to the Mucky Duck, and then Horns Hill Road comes off to the left, and that's where you have the two-storey extension. I mean, it's prominent for a reason, because it's there to attract people to the premises. So it doesn't shy away from trying to be noticeable in the street scene. But in terms of proportionality of building form and mass, we feel it's a suitable way in which you can extend the building. In terms of the residential amenity, yes, Westland is going to be impacted. I don't think the environmental health officers and your planning officers are saying that there won't be a disruption. That's and an impact that's inevitable because of the use that's being proposed. But we have tried to balance that with a series of controls through the conditions. There are a number of them, but each of those conditions deal with a very particular issue, such as lighting, noise management, parking. So that's why we separated them out as particular condition suites. So on the face of it, it seems there's a lot, but actually they're all dealing with certain issues. I think one of the key ones is the operational site management plan. What we wouldn't expect that to do is to cap number of people outside at any one time, because we wouldn't be able to successfully enforce that. But what we can do is to look at the areas that are sensitive to the neighbour in terms of outdoor seating. And there is a condition about prohibiting the use of the outdoor seating at sensitive times. But we could look at, well, how could that be refined through the later agreement of the operational management plan? I mean, fundamentally, there isn't the access to the north, which is an introduction of a new activity, but you do have a fair distance to the actual dwelling house of Westland to the north. And also there is some boundary softening there to provide some respite visually from cars, and also we can look at the materiality of the surfacing to try and help reduce noise transfer from cars using it. So those conditions also deal with light pollution as well through a set of a lighting scheme to help control that. On the septic tank, condition 3 is limited at the moment to surface water. The septic tank installation itself often doesn't require an application. It could be done under permitted development. But in this circumstance, if members feel that that's a concern, the wording of condition 3 can be extended to foul sewer treatment, so we can get the details of that and how that would work in terms of the connection. In terms of the BNG, so what happens is, because the intention is to do off-site purchase of units, there will be a separate discharge of BNG, and within that there will be a need to provide what we call habitat management and management plan, and allied to that is probably will be a revised metric, because the applicant would want to understand how much up-to-date information they got before they commit to purchase of a unit. So although it's not complete at this point, there will be that safeguard in relate to discharge. So overall, I think as officers, we've reached compromise on a lot of the issues, and we have got the control suite in there to help safeguard amenities.
Thank you very much. I now open this up for debate by the committee members, reminding you that we are considering both DC 24/1855 and DC 24/1856 together, but we will be voting separately on these matters. Thank you. Any members wishing to speak? No? Oh, Councillor Trollope, sorry, yes, just in time.
Thank you. It's not really to speak so much, it's just to ask a very simple question. Based on what the first speaker was mentioning, and I know the answer, but I just want a confirmation, maybe for her benefit, that the profitability or not of this enterprise is not a planning consideration.
Not the direct profits, but what the basis of that investment being put back into the building, and for example, funding restoration of historical fabric, that would be a material consideration, because that goes to enhancing or working towards reinstatement of the special qualities of a listed building, but not directly does this business make X number per month per capita.
Okay, I think I see the distinction. Thank you.
Councillor Croker, then I come to Councillor Clark and then Councillor Knoll. Councillor Croker.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few things I'd like to cover, please. Firstly, do we know how many parking spaces there were in the original pub? When I say original, I mean the one that's just closed down.
No, because on the photographs shown, it's not demarked on the ground. So, and we don't have to hand information to understand what capacity that car park had.
The car park of the old pub basically is the whole of the tarmac area, which is from the Mucky Duck to the, I don't know what it's called, the building at the back, the T-shaped building. That whole area is the car park, because I went and had a look at it on Sunday afternoon. And that is all tarmac for car parking. But he's right, it's not marked out in car parking spaces.
Did what he said. Okay, so that's what the officer said, that there was no, they're not marked. Car parking spaces are not marked, and that's been confirmed by Councillor Clark.
Okay, thank you for that. The second point is with regard to the new access to this site. I must admit, having read the noise report, I'm not convinced. The boundary to the first to the closest residence is about 14 metres by my measurements on a map. And if you think about the volume of traffic that's quite likely to be going in and out of this which is new, you know, this access hasn't been used before for this sort of use. I really do have some concerns around noise there. And as the officer knows, I also have some concerns about the visibility of, as it gets onto the lane outside, primarily because there's a tree quite close to the entrance, or the proposed entrance, the existing entrance to the old house, that is. But I don't have hard numbers on the noise, so I can't comment further. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the tree that the councillor's referring to is tree 3, which is just directly, well, the first one south of the access. It's shown outside of visibility display, so it won't obscure views of the access from users. And it's shown retained, so we're confident, and so Highway Authority is, that the new access wouldn't directly necessitate the removal of the tree, which is part of that important street scene that the parish raised. And there is more landscaping on that street scene as a visual improvement. So hopefully it will sit well within a complementary landscaping to the betterment of the street scene. In terms of noise, I mean, I don't think we can shy away from the fact that there is a new access there. It is going to be the only access to the development, so there will be a new introduction of a noise issue for that neighbour. But there are ways in which you can try and mitigate that through the surfacing treatment and environmental health are satisfied with that relationship. That it is within tolerance. So it's difficult for us to say fundamentally the access is unacceptable in that position.
Sorry, just to add, you can see from the report that, you know, this was a discussion point with officers and environmental health, and obviously that's what informed the suite of conditions that are recommended. So in our view, it mitigates that impact sufficiently that the development is acceptable. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Sharon. I think to answer Councillor Croker, basically the tree wouldn't be a problem because I visited a site on Sunday and turned around in one of the drives there, and it's a clear straight road, narrow but straight, so it's quite clear visibility displays. If you were coming out of there, looking at, I've got a series of questions, if I may. So the first one is about the drive here. What is the what's the word? Materials of construction. Is it just tarmac? Because if it's tarmac or block paving, that's one thing. If it's gravel, it's entirely different. So the question is, do we know what that is in terms of, because that's a major impact on noise.
So I'm just going to check the conditions to see whether there's a hard landscaping surfacing condition.
I think it is a critical question to do with noise.
Waiting. We've got two options. We've got condition 8, which is materials and finishings, which usually conventionally apply to buildings, but there's also condition 18, which is about none of the uses take place until a plan showing the layout of the parking and turning spaces, the covered parking spaces structures. So within that, there could be an extension of the details to include surfacing material treatment of the driveway.
I'm talking of the access road in the car park. So is that something that we need to modify now, or is that something that we can assume is covered by those conditions, and maybe we can minute it or something?
I think the suggestion is to add it to condition 18.
Okay, I'll just make a note, shall I? We'll come back on that. Looking at that, that picture. Two questions. Presumably the blue lines are some sort of water feature, are they, or something? Because at the moment, certainly the one that's heading towards the end of Horns Hill Lane is basically where the tarmac is and where the backside of the car park is. There's also, there's also another building there.
Sorry, it's a decorative water feature as part of landscaping, yeah.
But because there is another building there at the moment, which I think they're going to knock down and take out. So that's another building there.
So that's building 3,
Yeah.
which sits between the ducklings and the mucky duck, yeah.
Okay. The dark red lines, the heavy dark red lines, which is running sort of diagonal between the old house and the pub. Well, on this picture on my iPad, is that a wall or is that some sort of noise feature?
So it's not an intentional noise feature. What it is part of the treatment of the landscaping. I've got a landscaping mock-up I can show you, which might explain better. Sorry, it was typically at the end of the slides. So you can see here, it's formal hedging. So it's kind of laid out in a very sort of formalised garden, and you've got the sense of dividing up the spaces for like outdoor rooms. So I think the dark line is just indicating that treatment of maybe a dwarf wall, but it's, in terms of sort of noise, I can kind of see what you mean. That is that going to be an effective barrier? It may well help contain noise a little bit, but I think the main control around noise is what we have in the condition suite about excluding the use of those open areas after certain hours, and drawing back from having tables and chairs or other activities laid out. Obviously, there's a limit to what activity we can control through the condition, because people will want to use these spaces flexibly. Say certain guests have an intention of holding an event here, they might want to utilise some of the open lawn for croquet or something like that. So we don't want to be too heavy-handed.
I mean, the reason why I asked the question is essentially, if my eyesight is good enough, it's number 14 or whatever it is. You've got 24 sitting places there. And if you look at line of sight or as bird flies, you're on a direct line to the property which is next door. And there's basically, whereas if you look to the right hand side, so the back of the mucky duck where you've got seating arrangements and towards the lane, you've got buildings in the way and stuff, so all of that deadens the sound. So specifically what you're saying, I think, is by the conditions, you're going to limit the access. And certainly my view is to limit access to areas 14 and whatever 14A or whatever it is because those are in direct line of sight of the building, of the house next door, if you see what I mean. And that would have quite a lot of impact on their amenity, I would argue.
So I think the site operational plan has the potential to look at those areas and see how they could be managed. It may be that they can limit activity to certain areas, but it's a balance between, obviously the intention is to use this area like it is now and available to outdoor catering, just like the pub car park could be used now. I mean, you could organise events within that. So it's more, I think, where the controls are more reasonable to ask for is around that access and that northern boundary, because that's where the sensitivity is. I think when you're looking at the Ducklins and how it will be converted to ancillary hotel accommodation, people are in that building for that intention, so they probably are not going to be affected or will be using those spaces. It's more the neighbour to the north and seeing where that areas could be. And in some ways, actually having all the activity down to the south is a response to that, because it's drawn all of that outdoor seating away from that north boundary. It could, if we were to invite a reconcept here and use the access as existing, you're potentially spreading that activity further north to the side. So at the moment, at least it all is contained, and like you say, you've got the hedgerows there to kind of contain people's activity.
Right, no, I wasn't saying redesign the thing. I mean, I think it's a very brave decision in the yes minister context. But essentially, I'm just looking at line of sight to the building next door, and my concern is the amenity of the building next door, of course. So I hear what you say about the management plan, so okay, we'll see. At what point do we come back on condition 18, presumably the end?
I will come back to that in a moment, because Councillor Knoll had his hand up, and then Councillor Vickers, and then I will come to this condition 18. Thank you. And sorry, and I'll come to you then, Councillor Mercer. Apologies. Not for the moment. I need to go to Councillor Knoll and Councillor Vickers. Then I will come to you. Then I will come to condition 18.
Thank you, Chairman. My point does actually come back to 18 as well. I'm seriously concerned about the viability of this business. I don't understand how they're going to make it work. I've counted from the diagram up there about 45, 46 parking spaces. This is a destination place for entertainment. Very few people will be walking there. It's outside the village, so it'll be available by car travel only, basically. If you look at the amount of dining areas, even outside, that doesn't include the bar, the pub, the dining tables inside, you're never going to be able to fill it up with only 46 cars. You know, a car with people going out to eat will possibly have 2 people, sensibly, maybe 4 if it's a family. But if you think about it, how's that business going to work with just those parking spaces? The original plan is nearly all parking in the garden. And what this plan has done is make it into some kind of garden feature all over the site. So it's either garden laid out to lawn, shrubbery, or dining space. You're never going to be able to get everyone in there. It's ridiculous. It needs to be rethought. And I'm just trying to look at it from a business point of view. If I was running that pub, I would make most of the garden into parking space, because otherwise you're never going to get anyone in there. So I think the parking has to be rethought. As it is, the design of the copper-clad kitchen, again, is just an attraction, but it's taking up valuable space that could be used for parking. So my point is, going back to 18, the whole thing needs to be rethought. And I just don't see it as a viable business option at the moment. I mean, I know it's not a planning issue, but I would send it back and get them to rethink it.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Just to be clear, we can't in planning consider whether the business will survive or not, or whether it's viable. Ultimately, we're considering the use and whether the use is acceptable. In this case, obviously, you already have a pub and a B&B on the site. So in terms of the use itself, it's not significantly indifferent. The level of parking is a material consideration, but you can't link that to whether the business will survive or not, and whether it can, I think ultimately, in terms of the level of parking, that has been assessed. The county highways has considered it acceptable, and officers consider that level of parking acceptable. So I think we need to be mindful of that. Is there anything you wanted to add?
We have also got a travel plan statement secured by condition where there's an initiative for shuttle bus, and I think the reason why that's being put forward is not just because it's added as a last minute. I think it's a genuine offer, because when you have these boutique hotels and B&Bs and rental accommodation, they will attract people from further afield. So it's quite often they put it as part of your booking package, that you have a concierge service that can pick you up from train or Gatwick and ride you down. So I think it's a genuine thing that will continue once the business succeeds, hopefully. In terms of the extensions, they are really, I can show the floor plans, but I think the purpose of it is that they're extending the buildings for the function of the building. It's not excess space. It is there for a purpose. And the garden you see there, it's maximised out with the tables and chairs to show the worst case situation. It is unlikely that at all times it will be populated to that extent.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I know it's not a planning consideration, and perhaps I'm wrong in raising it, but there's not enough parking, and that's the only thing I want to say.
Councillor Vickers.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's quite a difficult one, actually. I remember when this was a pub, and it was a very popular pub, and I did visit it many, many years ago, and there were a lot of car parking spaces. I couldn't tell you how many, but it was a well-used and a popular venue. Clearly, this could be an events venue. I have some concerns about the level of outside activity on the nearest resident. So is there a condition in here that controls music being played outside? I'm sorry if I've missed that. I tried checking the conditions, but just as a matter of concern, if I've worked it out correctly, there's about 130 seats outside for those tables that are shown on the plans. So that could equate to what, 30-something cars, I guess, if all of them had 4 people in them. So there may be enough car parking for that number outside. I am concerned about the new access and the impact on the nearest resident to the north. Is that access road wide enough for in and out at the same time? There isn't going to be any backing up onto the road or back into the car park. So there's a couple of questions there. Thank you.
Yeah, so condition 23 is the one that addresses the music, the amplified music outdoors, so that's restricted. The width of the access is 5 metres, and the highway authority is satisfied that that could accommodate the bigger vehicles like refuse and waste to be able to enter and exit and turn on the site. We sort of debated about the tables and chairs. I suppose the other point to make is the plan is illustrative of the arrangement of tables and chairs, and we wouldn't be looking to micromanage how many tables and seats there are out, so that equally there could be, if the business model adapts to the market, could be a different arrangement come in where there are not so many, if there isn't that demand. It's the worst case of they filled out to example the potential maximum there.
And one other question was about the copper kitchen. That's attached to the listed building, or it's completely separate from it?
So there's two extensions treated in copper. There's the one to the old house. I'll show the elevation. So that's the listed building, and you can see it replaces the conservatory there. And then on the Mucky Duck building, there's a similar approach to extension there. So there's a contemporary two-storey interpretation of the Mucky Duck, and then you've got between those a very obvious departure of form, but in terms of massing and where it sits against the ridge, and also the eaves.
And the heritage officer's happy with those, the impact on the integrity of the listed buildings?
So for the listed building, he's recognised and identified less than substantial harm at the lower end of the scale. He also brought up that there were some benefits to what they were proposing in terms of the internal fabric. I can quickly show you the slide on that. So here you can see the inside of the building, and how the old house has been assessed as it's grown over time to different phases. And there are some benefits of reinstatement, some room proportions, and taking away some modern brickwork, but equally there are some detrimental aspects to what they want to do. So yeah, he's balanced it all out.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Mercer.
A detail, really, Chairman. I'm looking at the satellite picture that's on Google Maps of the current site, and the asphalt area of the current car park is not very beautiful, let's put it that way, and significantly large. In fact, if one looks at the cars that are in there and you sort of do your blocking in your mind, I don't see that the new car parking is going to provide many more spaces. The one thing the new car parking is doing, though, is distributing organised spaces around a new area. And from previous experience elsewhere, I'm asking if we have on the plan that you showed, there was a different colour between the actual access drive and the spaces themselves. Are we suggesting that those spaces would be, for example, mesh with grass growing through, or what would be the visual impact of those spaces?
So it's unlikely to be grass. The reason is there will be covered pergolas over the parking space, because the conservation officer identified that he didn't particularly want a sea of tarmac.
Yes, but
so there is
the same point.
an attempt to try and conceal those, but the surfacing spacing is likely to be paving of some description, but we can control that through condition 18, because that does relate back to the car park layout.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now I will come to Councillor Frankland, and I will not come to another member until Councillor Clark has put forward his amendment to condition 18.
Yeah, just so where I am on this, couple of comments and one question, really. I think the potential noise impact on the neighbour is significant, so anything that we can do to optimise or minimise that, I would support, and I look forward to having the opportunity to support Councillor Clark's potential amendment to one of the conditions. Where I am on architecture, I'm not an architect, but I I like new things, and I know it's not a planning consideration necessarily, but I don't see any issue with combining new and old. I'm kind of a fan of it. But the question I have is around waste, actually. This it could be a significant and busy venue generating quite a lot of waste. I think it would be important to know that that's been thought about in the planning and where that waste might be stored. Particularly if it's and that it should not have any impact on well, neighbours particularly. I don't know if that's been if it's in the report and I've missed it, please forgive me, but if not, then do you have any information on that?
So we got the final details of the storage and the design of that through a condition. So I'm just trying to locate the actual number.
Prize for if anyone can find it before.
21.
21. Councillor Brown. Thank you. That's it. Yeah, it's 21.
Okay, that seems to be. Okay. Councillor Clark, your amendment to condition number 18.
Well, basically what condition 18 says at the moment is use of development non-rigid. You need a plan to show the layout, proposed development, provision of cart. And I think what it needs is car parking and turning spaces, details of the covered parking space structures, and the materials used for the carriageway. Maybe there is a better word than carriageway, but basically the drive or whatever you want to call it need to be determined beforehand in order to minimize noise. Yeah, well, I call it drive, but you call it access road or whatever you want to call it.
That's a sentence we're going to add in.
In other words, I know asphalt isn't pretty, but block paving is not bad, but gravel is very, very noisy. That's the point.
Just a suggestion, Councillor Clark, and picking up the comments I think Councillor Mercer said. I think members would want the materials related to the driveway and the parking spaces explicitly within there. I think that was Councillor Mercer's expectation. So I think we can certainly add that wording to condition 18. Is materials, the materials to be used for the driveway and the parking spaces to be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. Thank you.
Is everyone clear on that condition? Yep. So we're going to. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Clark's can. Yep. Okay. All those in favour of that amendment to the condition, please show. That's unanimous, I think. Okay. Thank you. That amendment will be made to condition 18. Any last comments before I go on to the vote on this? I will take Councillor Knoll. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question about the sewage water requirement. Is that going? Does we need to add anything to the conditions to deal with that, and also the potential of a brick wall to reduce noise transmission to the neighbour?
It was part of the discussion in terms of foul sewage that would need to be amended. Condition 3. So members would similarly to condition 18 need to put forward alternative wording to that condition. In terms of the wall, I think my view is that could be considered as part of the wider landscaping scheme. I don't think we should be reliant on the provision of wall for noise. I think the environmental health colleagues have commented on the proposals. We have various conditions that there might be an added benefit, but I don't think we should be requiring it. I think it needs to be considered in the round with all the landscaping details as part of the discharge of that condition, would be my advice.
Councillor Knowles, would you like to propose a alternative wording or wording to enhance this condition by covering the foul water? So maybe,
Thank you, Chair. I wonder whether the officers could help with that so that it's wording that is going to be acceptable.
yeah, just needs to.
I think it's just as simple as putting after reference point of connection with foul and surface as a, just insert those.
Thank you, that sounds good.
Do I have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Clark. All those in favour of adding that to the existing condition, number 3?
That is unanimous.
Thank you. Therefore, that condition will be amended accordingly. I'm now going to go to the vote on this particular item. And this is for DC 241855. And the recommendation here is to delegate approval to the Head of Development and Building Control, subject to the appropriate conditions and the consideration of any comments from Natural England in response to the appropriate assessment. All those in favour, please show. Any against?
1 against.
Any abstentions? No. Therefore, the recommendation has been carried and approved. I then ask for the vote on DC 24/1856, and the recommendation here is to approve listed building consent. All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Therefore, the recommendation to approve listed building consent has been carried. Thank you very much. Moving on, if any members of the public wish to leave, they're quite willing to do so.
That's Ozan.
It's Ozan.
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 Okay. Thank you. Now moving to agenda item number 7, which is DC 250849, which is Delta, Shoreham Road, Smaldole. Please could the officer make a presentation to committee? Thank you.
So similarly to the previous agenda item, we've had an updated Habitat Regs appropriate assessment for water neutrality issued by the council that accords with the agreed procedure of Natural England to raise no objection following their withdrawal of their position statement. There's also been a consultation response from West Sussex Fire for fire hydrant provision. That's a matter for later stage permission with this type of application, which will be explained. So this is a planning in principle application, and that separates out the considerations of matter of principle from the technical detail for development. So the only matters under consideration now and this meeting are the location, the land use and the amount of development. And the application is submitted for two scenarios, one at 9 number dwellings and the other at 5 number dwellings, and they're all single story in height. So as showed on the slide, the east end of the site is in the built up area boundary of Small Dole and the west end is outside. Small Dole is identified as a smaller village in the council's settlement hierarchy for accommodating the district's housing growth. And both scenario amounts are judged by officers to be proportionate to the settlement. So there's some site photographs shown here of the existing bungalow, its outbuildings, which are all to be demolished, and that the site becomes increasingly vegetated towards its western end. So on the current slide now is the proposed site plan with the maximum amount applied for, that's the 9 dwellings, alongside photographs showing the neighbouring building to the south, which is the most impacted neighbour, and the shared boundary treatment along a certain section of the site. So members will note there's been past applications on the site which have been refused as recently as March this year. So on the screen is the site layout for the outline submission for 7 dwellings, which was refused. And as you can see, the key difference to that and the current PIP with the planning in principle application is that the previously proposed housing location didn't adjoin the existing settlement edge, whereas it does now. And also still on those past outline applications, what's evident in comparison of those is one of them was a failure to be landscape led because it resulted in significant loss of trees on the site, and also urbanising effect by trying to provide for 4 dwellings on the roadside frontage. And in comparison with the current application, you can see those trees are retained and you've, as officers feel, got a more sympathetic amount of development on the frontage. But obviously at this point what we're looking at is not precise layout, just whether the site can accommodate the amount of development. So this slide illustrates the explanation given in the committee report to why we're recommending the scenario of 5 dwellings, that's 4 net, as opposed to the 9. And that's mostly because the 9 dwellings is judged to be out of place because of their detachment and setback from Shoreham roads. That's what's indicated in land as red on the slide. And those are substantially behind the established built line of the street. So in conclusion, the officer recommendation is to permit planning in principle based on the 5 dwellings, the 4 net.
Thank you very much. Invite the first and only speaker on this particular application, and that's Uzan Denizé. And apologies if I've mispronounced your name. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. I'm the planning agent for this application. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the applicants. This is a straightforward proposal that aligns closely with national planning policy, Horsham's current housing position, and the council's recently endorsed shaping development in Horsham district guidance, previously the FAD document. I would like to briefly highlight the key considerations that support the grant of permission today. Firstly, the site is partly within the defined built-up area boundary of Small Dole and directly adjoins it in the remainder. For plots 1 to 3, development is clearly acceptable in principle under both the HTPF and the Henfield Neighbourhood Plan. For plots 4 to 5, the council's report correctly recognises not only the adjacency to the built-up area, but also the existing Class Q fallback, which lawfully permits a dwelling outside of the boundary and can be implemented. This is an important material consideration that weighs significantly in favour of the proposal. The Council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing supply, and key HDPF policies relating to settlement boundaries and the housing provision are now out of date. As the NPPF requires, the tilted balance is fully engaged. The Council's own shaping development document anticipates applications such as this and confirms that sites adjoining settlement edges should be supported. Overall, the application meets every criterion within this guidance. Third, the amount of development the application seeks for between 5 and 9 dwellings is considered to be acceptable. Officers are of the view that the site is capable of sensitively accommodating at least 5 dwellings, and they recommend approval on this basis. Importantly, the PIP stage does not determine layout, design, or detailed impacts. Those are all reserved for the technical details phase. What is being decided today is simply whether this is a suitable site in principle for residential development. The submitted details and the officer's recommendation are clear that it is. Sustainability-wise, the proposal sits within walking distance of bus stops, a shop and a post office and other village services. Smalldale is recognised as a settlement with good accessibility to larger centres, including Henfield to the north. The development would represent logical, proportionate growth to the village, already characterised by a range of plot sizes, built forms and development layouts. In summary, this is a sustainable location, policy compliant and a deliverable site. It provides much needed housing at a time when Horsham cannot meet its supply, lies partly within a settlement boundary, benefits from a realistic fallback and fully aligns with national policy and the Council's own guidance. We therefore respectfully ask members to support this application in line with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I will now open this for debate by the committee. Councillor Knoll, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm speaking as ward councillor and won't be voting on this. However, I'm now speaking to support our officer's recommendation that we take the 5 dwelling option to be approved here tonight. The HDC landscape officer has commented on this application and points out that the previous application last year, which was totally refused by officers, had the same adverse impact on landscape and visual effect as this application in front of us now. This is also contrary to policies 25 and 26 of the HDPF. The landscape officer therefore recommends a reduction in the number of dwellings to the 5 that are part of the present building and garden area of Delta. This is due to the fact that the greenfield land to the west of the site is in open countryside and part of a well-defined field pattern. There is a large area of ancient woodland and woodland scrub to the edge of the area. This area includes silver birch, horse chestnuts and mature oaks. If we view the current built-up planning area to the west side of Shoreham Road, none of the building plots extend into this open countryside. And even a small development of bungalows further to the south all conform to the present built-up pattern, so the open fields have been preserved to maintain the existing landscape character. The extra 4 houses to the back of Delta will not follow this pattern, and therefore building on the back of the Delta plot would appear incongruous and totally out of character with the existing building line. It's simply an unnecessary addition by the developer. I feel this permission in principle should be confined to the development of the existing site only and remain restricted to the 5 houses that conform to the existing building line. And that's all I need to say, I think. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor Croker, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Knowles said it all really, and I agree with what he said. The going up to 9 on that site is just getting into the countryside. I don't think it's just not what Small Doll is. Thank you.
Any other? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I've not come across one of these before, so I'm a bit comfortable about it, but fine. I understand the tool. You made a comment earlier on the officers about fire hydrants. I mean, presumably that comes in the next phase. I didn't catch what you said, that's all.
Yeah, so this application doesn't allow for conditions to be attached. And in any case, it will be a technical detail, so it will come in at a later stage.
So it comes back later on.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing is, in the correspondence, there was a comment from environmental health, but there is no environmental health document attached in any of the paperwork. Do we know what the environmental health comments were? Because he refers to a document attached to it, but the attachment's not on the website. Do we know what was said?
Oh, I see what you mean. So at 3.3, it's reported that the environmental health relied on their comments of the 1933, which was the previous outline permission. So whilst that's not on the website, you can find that out by looking up the application reference, but as that was an outline permission, they were probably looking at issues like contamination, for example, which would be captured even as an outline planning permission. But because the PIP is even more streamlined to what you would be considering as decision maker, I don't feel, even though the comments are not reported in detail, there will be material to those three issues that we're looking at currently, which is location, land use, and amount. Because the land use is not, even if it was contaminated, we're not saying that that's not an appropriate land use for housing, because there will be an opportunity for remediation measures to come in at the technical matters stage to address any of the contamination if there is any evident on the site.
Just to say, it was contamination and details of rainwater harvesting. Obviously, that was the proposal at the time. And basically construction hours, that was the conditions. Thank you.
But just so I understand correctly what we're voting on, so in terms of, I've read it, so are we handing over to officers the ability to decide independently for up to a net 8 buildings, say 9 in total, without any further discussion? Is that what we're saying in this? Because I'm still not clear what permission in principle means, to be honest with you.
So it means in principle, and if you're not considering any other matters, can you deliver between 5 and 9 dwellings on this site? That is all you're considering. That is it, pretty much. Okay. All other matters will be at the technical stage. That will be another application which members can choose to call to committee or consider as you see fit at that time.
Thank you for clarifying. Now I feel more comfortable.
Councillor Vickers, and I come to...
Sorry, can I just quickly come back, Chairman, on what the Head of Development's just said? Does that mean the reserved matters will automatically come back to this committee, or will it need to be called back to this committee?
Yes. Other than departures, no applications automatically come to committee.
So it doesn't require...
It would need to be called to committee by a member or meet one of the other criteria within the constitution.
So if when the detailed application, the reserved matters comes back and there are more than 8 representations contrary to recommendation, it will come to committee?
Yes.
Or if one of the local members calls it or the parish calls it?
Yes,
fine.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Councillor Blackford.
Thank you. Sorry to labour this point, but if we give permission, it is for up to 5, not 9, because there's a note to applicant here. That
we're not allowed, that's informative. We're not allowed to add conditions, and the PIP applications are a range. So if you consider between 5 and 9 acceptable, you need to permit it. but the technical detail stage will look at the exact numbers. So that's why there's an informative on to say the expectation is that the technical
About
details
6.
application comes in for 5, but we will have to consider at that time whether that's acceptable, and members can choose to call it in or whatever at that time. But the description of development is a range,
Call it in, surely.
and that is the application type, I'm afraid. We did look into this as to whether we could change the description.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, Emma.
Councillor Knoll.
Can I just ensure that ward members are kept informed of this, or is that not within our remit tonight?
It's not within the remit tonight, and ultimately it relies on an individual officer, you know, and as an individual member, you know, it's just telling somebody, can they do this? You know, I can't guarantee they're going to remember, obviously I hope so, but you will be notified for the weekly list. You will obviously have notification if you get over a certain number of representations. We will certainly try, but the processes of notification is through the weekly list. You can also sign up, and we can have this conversation another time, but you can also sign up for notification, so you're notified via the website if something comes in. There are ways in which you can certainly find out, but I do take note in terms of letting you know when it's in. Thank you.
Thank you, I'm happy with that, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Croker.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just have a bit of clarification from the head of development then? So the vote tonight is permission in principle for 5 to 9. If it came in for 9 as a planning application, would the officer's report here that we're looking at be considered at all?
I know what you mean. Is it material consideration? I understand what you're saying, Councillor Croker. Well, it is a material consideration, but obviously you need to look at the details of what the officers are saying, and what we're saying clearly in the informative and the content of the report is our view is extending beyond where that prior approval is not acceptable, you know, so that's, you know, it's not the permission itself necessarily, it's more widely in terms of the considerations at that point.
Okay, any final comments? No? Okay, therefore we will go to the vote on this, and the recommendation is to delegate approval for permission in principle to the Head of Development and Building Control to consider any comments from Natural England in response to the appropriate assessment. All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Okay, therefore that recommendation has been passed by committee. Thank you very much. Any members of the public who wish to leave, you may do so. Okay, moving on to item number 8, which is DC 25-1509. It's Christ Hospital Sports Centre, Christ Hospital. Please could the officer make a presentation to committee? Thank you.
So as shown on the slide, this application is for directional signage, demonstrating a functional design that is not felt to be inappropriate to its countryside location. It results in no identified harm to the setting of the Grade 2 listed Christ Hospital, and results in no adverse amenity and public safety harms. That's within the narrow focus of advert regulations. Therefore, officers recommend approval as set out in the committee report.
Thank you very much. Invite the first speaker on this particular application, and that is Sue Limpany. And you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Right. Christ Hospital installed a large sign with black letters on a white background to direct cars to the new enlarged Blue Coats car park. Most of us assumed it was temporary and would be removed when 2 new signs were erected with the traditional CH signage of white and yellow letters on a blue background. The last 2 applications for the expansion of Blue Coats were rejected on the basis of negative landscape impact. The black on white sign is large and suited to a major road, not a country lane with a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit. It is located in a field and is not in keeping with a semi-rural area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andrew Watson, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Chair, members of the committee, I'm speaking in support of this retrospective application for 2 non-illuminated directional signs at Christ Hospital, serving both the Blue Coat Sports Health and Fitness Club and the main school entrance. These are simple, functional signs installed to address a clear safety issue. Before their installation, visitors to the sports club often used the wrong entrance, that of the main school, which led to vehicles, including coaches and delivery vans, turning within the school grounds and creating safety risks for pupils and staff. The signs now provide clear direction for all users and ensure that emergency vehicles can reach the correct destination without delay. The signs themselves are modest in size, non-illuminated and positioned on the applicant's own land, set back from the carriageway. They follow the format of standard highway directional signs, a white reflective background with black text, and include no commercial branding. They are designed to be visible but not distracting, and they sit comfortably within their surroundings. The Council's Conservation Officer has raised no objection, confirming that the signs cause no harm to the setting of the listed school buildings. The County Highways team have responded to confirm they have no objection. The officer report also concludes that there is no unacceptable impact on local amenity or highway safety. In fact, the signs make the area safer and more legible for all road users. The application fully accords with the Horsham District Planning Framework, particularly Policy 14 on advertisements, and with paragraph 141 of the National Planning Policy Framework, which makes clear that advertisements should only be controlled in the interests of amenity and public safety. On both counts, this proposal performs well. For these reasons, I respectfully ask members to support the officer's recommendation and grant advertisement consent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we will now, the officer will read a speech from Councillor Derek Moore, who can't be here this evening. Thank you.
Chairman, members of the committee, I'm speaking today on behalf of Southwater Parish Council to object to the application DC 25-1509 for the retrospective installation of 2 non-illuminated freestanding signs at Christ Hospital Sports Centre. Whilst we are supportive the Christ Hospital Sports Centre and its positive impact for amenity and health for the community, our objection is based on the following key points. The proposed signage is of an unacceptable size and is incongruous with the character of the site and its surroundings when compared to other signs in and around the sports centre and adjacent roads. These signs are out of keeping and create a visually intrusive presence. The application does not fully comply with SNP 5 and SNP 16, which require signage to respect the scale, design, and character of its setting. These policies aim to ensure that signage does not dominate or detract from the visual amenity of the area. In this case, the size and prominence of the signs clearly conflict with these principles. While we acknowledge the need for clear identification of the sports centre, this can be achieved with signage that is appropriately scaled and sympathetic to its context. We therefore request that the signs be reduced in size to align with local policy and maintain the visual harmony of the area. To summarize, the current signage is disproportionate and visually intrusive, and we ask the committee to be considerate to residents who have expressed concerns over the signage's current form or require a condition that the signs be resized to comply with policy and local character.
Thank you very much. I will. Okay, sorry. Now open up for debate by the committee members. Councillor Vickers, yes.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. You will see from the report that I asked for this to come to the committee. The reason I asked for that is because when this sign first went up, I thought it was a temporary sign whilst the construction of the sports centre development, the running track and all the other things were happening. There were a lot of lorries coming in and out, and of course there was some confusion. Now that level of construction has diminished, I feel that those signs are now in the wrong place and are too large. If we could just have another look at the actual sign. It is on the opposite side of the road from the school in a field which you approach the sports centre from Tower Hill direction. It's a really large sign. It's out of keeping with scale and character in this country setting. As the public speaker said, it's a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. There are other signs on the other side of the road which clearly state where the sports centre is. I totally support highway safety. Coaches getting the wrong entrance is a problem or has been a problem. All the coaches now know where the entrance to the sports centre is. There is a clear sign on the other side of the road. And I just feel that this particular sign is totally out of keeping with this countryside setting. I'm asking the committee to refuse the application, and I would like the applicant to come back with something that's more appropriate in this location. Thank you. I don't have a vote, Chairman.
Fully appreciate that. Thank you. Councillor Croker, then Councillor Blackburn, and then Councillor Franklin.
Thank you, Chair. I think the first thing is that somebody ought to have a word with Google, because Google still sends you to the school. Second point I'd say is that you can look at this sign, and the first thing is the good news is it's not illuminated. The bad news, I think, is just about everything else, because it's 4 meters square, the bigger of the two sides. That's big. It just looks totally out of place, but I'll be interested to hear what other members say.
Thank you. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask officers, in the chairman of South Horsham Parish Council's speech, there's a suggestion that the size of it does not align with policy. Is that correct?
So South Water neighbourhood plan policies, I think 5 and 15 were quoted. I think they're design policies. 5 and 16. They don't specify recommended proportions, dimensions to certain signage. It's more to do with the locality and whether the proportion or the proportionality of the sign is suitable. Those are sort of the words used in the policy, as opposed to saying a directional signage should be no greater than 3 meters or up to 4 meters. So
just to be clear, it's a matter of judgment as to whether the sign complies with those policies or not.
Okay, and there's nothing to compare it. Compare what is there. Nothing, no comparison really.
Well, it's just a case of, is this sign acceptable or not? Do you consider it has a harmful impact, or its design is acceptable, etc.? And that is a matter of kind of professional judgment or committee members' judgment as to whether it complies with those policies. Officers consider they're acceptable, but obviously there are some concerns that have been raised to them. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that's interesting, but safety is paramount too, and presumably the sign is made a certain size because that's what the school thinks is required. Okay, yeah, thank you.
Councillor Franklin, and I'll come to you in a moment, Councillor Trott.
Yeah, I suppose I concur with Councillor Croker's opinion on the scale of the signs. I'm very familiar with that road, and yeah, I'm slightly taken aback by how big they are. I'm sure they're doing their job. I think they're there as a result of the very significant investment in the sports facility there. So should they have to end up getting permission but having to reduce the size to something that still works but is fits in a bit better, I'm sure that wouldn't be, be an issue.
Thank you. Councillor Trollope.
Just my thought that I don't find the signs that egregiously big for the environment, and I favour it because I have taken the wrong turn on a few occasions in Christ Hospital. I wish they had added a bit of signage for the Downs link as well. That would have been welcome, but it won't change my decision to vote in favour of this.
So just to be clear, obviously the scope of this application and what we're considering here today is the signs before us. You can't within the scope of this application ask for something different or something smaller. It is a case of, is this proposal acceptable or not? Thank you.
Sorry, to follow on from that, I wasn't actually seriously suggesting it, but
no, I know, but that's kind of a suggestion that has been made, I think, as part of this evening's item. Thank you.
I suppose also one consideration is when it's mentioned about outer scale, it is all relative to what, because it's not placed against a building background, so it's not out of scale proportion to an immediate reference point. So that does sort of make it difficult to make that sort of value judgment of inappropriate scale.
Councillor Vickers.
Chairman, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. My concern is for the necessity of that sign to be so large. I totally support that we need to be aware of highway safety for coaches going in and out of the school, and clearly they are frequent. However, the sign would still be clear if it wasn't so large, and the visuals on the screen do not show that clearly. When you actually drive past those signs, you see that they are completely out of keeping with everything else in that area. There are other signs on the other side of the road clearly marking the entrance to the sports centre, and the sign, the back of the sign coming from the other direction, by the time you get to that, you've already passed the main entrance to the school, so that's not helpful. So I'm saying that whilst I accept that we need a sign there that explains which is which, this is too big. I'm asking the committee to refuse it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. I think when we considering this, we need to obviously consider whether acceptable or not. I think it's difficult to make a judgment as to whether they are necessary or not. Although I think the debate has established we think some kind of signage is necessary. It therefore becomes a question of, is this acceptable, and if it's not, is it harmful, and why is it harmful? So I think that's the kind of thought process members need to consider. If there are concerns, is it harmful? Why is it harmful in this location? And we'd have to be able to explain that to justify a reason for refusal. Thank you.
If I may, Chairman, I think basically the reason why it's harmful is if you look at the other road signs, particularly the signs that the school has further down into the main entrance, they're much more, how can I put it, restrained in terms of colour, size and impact. So the comment was made, there's nothing to compare against. There are other signs that the school has put in to the main entrance and other parts of the school, which are much, from what I can judge, more aesthetically pleasing, so therefore they're not hit you in the eye so badly, and they are smaller. So therefore the impact is less and it's more in keeping with the surrounding area and the school itself. All you have to do is go on Google Earth and have a look, for example, or just drive down there, and that will immediately tell you the sort of scale that would be acceptable compared to what appears to be 4 square meters of signage. Because looking at the drawings in the backing documents, you're looking at 2 by 2, which is the 4 square meters Councillor Croker was talking about. Unless I've made a mistake, of course.
Councillor Strott, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick point. I think aesthetically pleasing is not necessarily the primary concern here. The primary concern is navigation and safety, and a sign that can be seen quickly as you drive at whatever speed you're going, rather than going, oh damn, I missed a turn. It needs to be of a reasonable size, not necessarily aesthetically wonderful.
Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm a bit stuck with that as well. I do appreciate and sympathise if if something looks incongruous in that location, and that it's different to the other signage the school has on the other side of the road. But presumably that's for a reason, and I'm not hearing why we would discount that. I'm just hearing that in somebody else's opinion there could be a different sign, but that is not what we're here to decide, I understand. So that's why I have difficulty with this. Thank you.
Okay, any final comments before we go to the vote? No? Okay, therefore the recommendation is to approve advertisement consent subject to the appropriate conditions as noted in the committee report. All those in favour, please show.
Ten.
All those against?
Four.
Any abstentions? Therefore, the recommendation has been approved. Thank you very much. I now move on to agenda item number 9, which is DC 251514, which is 7 Cooksmead, Rusper, West Sussex. Please could the officer make the presentation to committee? Thank you.
So as shown on the slide, this application is for a domestic extension. It's felt to be an appropriate design and scale to the host dwelling and its surroundings. And by way of building positions and orientations, neighbour harm, particularly around overlooking and loss of light and outlook, is avoided in terms of adversity. And therefore, officers recommend approval set out in the committee report.
Thank you very much. There are no registered speakers for this particular item, so I'll open it up for debate by committee. Thank you. Councillor Croker.
Just for a point of clarity, please. If I'm right, the extension at the back replaces a conservatory, is that right? I'm just concerned about the amount of light that comes through the conservatory that won't now, because it's now a brick wall.
Yeah, so it does replace the conservatory, and as a result, there will be some diminishment of light received from the conservatory, but in terms of the scale and where that ridge and eaves sit and the totality of the extent into the garden, it wouldn't be what we term adverse of a degree of reduction of overbearing and overshadowing.
Thank you for that.
Any other comments? No? Okay, therefore the recommendation to the committee is to approve planning permission subject to appropriate conditions as noted in the committee report. All those for?
Unanimous.
Therefore, the recommendation has been approved. I don't have any urgent business. So finally, I'd like to thank the officers for their presentations and guidance, the temporary vice chair for their support this evening, and members for your contribution, and wish you all a safe journey home. And at 19:33, I bring the meeting of the Planning Committee to a close. Thank you.